Hey, folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the Embellish Pod. If you got to be here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully, I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at embellishpod or TikTok with the exact same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, I'm going to be having Randy join me from the Kentucky Bourbon Festival. He and I talked about this time last year about the 2025 event, and obviously we're going to be talking about the 2026 event. It's an event that I always look forward to attending, and I hope I get an opportunity to be up there again this year. And so if you are an attendee or an interested in attendee, because there are still some opportunities to be able to sneak into the event in some form or fashion, I think you should probably watch this episode. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you happen to be consuming this episode of the podcast. I have Randy joining me from the Kentucky Bourbon Festival, which has been something that I've been able to enjoy ever since its reimagining. I've been as just a normal citizen attending. I've been able to come as a media person covering the event. And I think the big, well, not the only, but maybe the big story to start off with is that you've sold this out for 4 years in a row at this point. Your sellout for general admission was within 48 hours, 2 days roughly. And every festival organizer is watching this type of thing happen. And they say, how are you actually doing this? Like, are you able to sell this out so fast?
Well, and being someone who's done festivals for 36 years, I often look in the mirror and question myself on that. And I mean, it's just a combination of things, I think. Number one is it's a small boutique event. So we're not trying to sell 150,000 people like you would at a Coachella or something like that. So we're very limited. We haven't sold any more tickets in those 4 years. And that's something that we always get blowing up on social media. I wish they would stop overselling to too many people. And I can assure you it's the same number of people. It's just the distilleries there's more of them and the tents are getting bigger. So the aisleways are getting smaller and it just feels tighter. So I'm also aware of that. But no, I mean, I think our model, right? You mentioned it was reimagining. I like the way you put that because that's what we did in 2019 and between 2019 and 2021, using that COVID year as to kind of take a step back and really make sure we're doing things right. First of all, we put the distilleries first, and the distilleries know that. And to this day, every time we talk to them, we let them know that, give them the love. If they don't feel like they're getting the experience that they need, then they start going away, which is what was happening with the old festival. And then secondarily, if all the distillers are there and they're bringing out new product and they're doing the bottle sales, obviously, which is a game changer for everyone, then the consumer, bourbon enthusiast wants to be there also. So that really is kind of our recipe. When they allowed bottle sales a couple of years ago, it took a couple of years for the distilleries to get their feet under them and figure out how to take their gift shop mobile. But no, I believe that's really the recipe is the distilleries are always first, which means they keep coming back. And then the enthusiasts get a chance to buy bottles that they can't get anywhere else in the world in some cases. And that's kind of a fun thing when we're doing the off-season planning and discussion. As long as those elements that I just covered are there, then everything else is kind of secondary to that. And we always try to improve the experience. So it's no 2 years are the same, but we hope and intend that it's improving, not just change for change's sake. I mean, there's the old saying, don't fix it if it ain't broken. Well, I also believe, and I've seen it happen, it is possible to fix things until it is broken. Mm-hmm. So we don't tweak for just the heck of it. We actually look at very deliberate when we make changes. So, and I hope people see that and they keep coming back like you. And thank you.
Yeah. And I'll say, from the first year of 21 to, the 2025 session, I personally, so the first 2 years I came on my own dime. And then in 23 and 24 and 25, I was able to come as a media person. And what I marked, from my personal experience all the way until now is that every year, it feels like every year, maybe you guys focus on one area and make that particular part of it better from a management perspective. Day to day, and every attendee is going to have 27 things that they think should be done better. And if you try to focus on all 27 of those things, you're likely going to get none of them done in a meaningful way. And so I've appreciated, I kind of do a recap at the end of every year and I think, okay, here's the things that I noticed that could be improved, and without a miss, every year, the next year, one, if not more, of those things have been resolved. And so it's apparent, at least to me, that you guys are focusing on what people are saying when they come out on the other side of the event. A lot of times, you guys festivals will put out a survey to end users, and the end user will say, I don't like these 10 things about the event, but I do like these 10 things. And maybe nothing is ever done with that, right? People kind of get tired of doing surveys, but it's felt like to me, it has grown. It felt like last year was, at the end of the last event, I was sort of having a nitpick to find the things that I was like, I wish this particular thing was better. But you mentioned the bottle sales, and so I'll kind of dive in a little bit on that. I've talked to several brands, several distilleries, small craft distilleries, that the ability to sell their bottles at the event may have saved their business that year, right? The very first year they were able to do it. Starting a business like this is really, really hard because you have to buy a lot of inventory from somebody else while you're making yours to kind of catch up. And how do you remain profitable, and how do you do all these things? For a small brand, having this many, thousands upon thousands of potential customers in front of you over a 3 or 4 day period is pretty important. And how you guys have sold bottles has changed a little bit throughout the years. Are there any tweaks or changes to how the bottle sales process will work going into the 2026 year?
Sure. And thank you for uh, noticing and talking about the things we focus on. So to address that first, we narrow it down to 3 or 4 things, 3 initiatives that we mark for improvement. The whole team does a recap in October while it's still fresh in our brain, and I don't think there's anything that has been just completely, we screwed this up, but there's a lot of, we could do this better. There's things that we celebrate that went really well, and there's things that we identify. And then I kind of go through and then pick out those. And then we would take it to the board in December and say, these are the 3 areas, so the VIP guest experience is always important to us. The bottle sales, not only encouraging distilleries a couple of years ago, because it was optional. Now it's pretty much mandatory. If you're a distillery in this festival and you legally can sell, then we expect you to sell because people are buying tickets to the festival to buy. But like every year, and I'm not afraid to say this because the 3 or 4 top distilleries that are also the ones that have the largest lines, we work with them specifically in the off season. We have several meetings with them alone and collectively to say, okay, how are we going to do better at line management? And last year, the St. Joseph's Church parking lot, we put turf down, artificial turf, in a big tent in the middle, hopefully to give people a break from sun, but it also could be rain. And then we asked the distilleries to be a part of the solution to help us with the lines. So, one of the big things that we saw is with 800 VIPs and let's call it 5,000 general admission people, very few distilleries can bring enough inventory to satisfy all groups. And that is kind of the first thing that creates some of the tension is people come in and they expect now, and not just, isn't it cool that we can buy? It's, I'm coming here to get this bottle. And if I don't get the bottle, I'm waiting in line. Now I'm mad. So our kind of the mantra this last year was, we understand that people that are really into this are used to staying in line. That's part of the experience. You go to the distilleries and you wait in line before they even open their doors. And sometimes you don't even know what the daily offering is going to be. But what we don't want is someone disappointed and then compound that with angry because someone else in front of them got the last bottle and nobody communicated that with them. And from other distilleries, and as the event producer, I don't like someone standing in line for half hour, 45 minutes, hour, and not getting their bottle because now we've taken that person out of commission. It's a 6-hour day and we've taken them out of commission for a big fraction of that. So what we've been trying to do is communicate better with people, be more front of house. Hey, if you're after this person back, chances are you're not going to get this bottle, and come up with some kind of a system, even if it's just something everybody that has a barrel bung will get a bottle, that kind of thing. They're also looking at doing some experimenting with limited release times. So during the day, releasing instead of all right away at 11 o'clock when VIP opens, staggering them a little bit. That's something we did really successfully in my former life when I was doing craft beer festivals. Now, that wasn't because of sales. That was sampling only. But at 3 o'clock, head over to XYZ Brewery, and they're going to be bringing out the new peanut butter porter. And then that line would form, and that was, that would go. So we're trying that a little bit with the distilleries. But the cool thing is that we've kind of become the consumer electronics show for bourbon. So
Hmm.
you go to Vegas for the consumer, and that's where the new iPhones debut and all the technology. Well, the Bourbon Festival over the last couple of years has gotten to be where distilleries are either rebranding altogether, like Lawrenceburg started off on Friday of the festival 2 years ago, and then as part of the program, they changed to Larrikin and had the yellow kangaroo and the whole 9 yards. Or there, a lot of distilleries are bringing new product to market and starting with the Bourbon Festival. So, but that's really kind of what we've been looking at doing and communicating better from the one-on-one, from the distillery to the people standing in line. The lines are part of it. But a couple of years ago, I didn't realize that, and I thought we ruined the festival. I think I told you that here a year or two ago. It's like the first couple of years is a real chill stroll through the park and your sampling glass, and then man, when sales became that, now that's when the lines came, and I had to kind of talk myself into understanding that is part of the culture, and that's okay as long as those people are being communicated with. So that's what we spent a lot of this off season doing. And our problem is if we don't get it right, we have 361 days until we have another opportunity to do it right. So
Yeah.
this is what we do year round. We have a small team.
Hmm.
I've slowly brought people that I've worked with in the festival and events industry. There's 2 or 3 people on the team that I worked with for doing the Kentucky Derby. That's coming up in about 8 or 9 days, the Kentucky Derby run. So I've got people that were at the top of their game professionally in operations and logistics now working with me to hopefully make the Bourbon Festival run more smoothly as well.
Yeah, and I'll say, I spent a good deal of time post event last year watching some other folks' reactions to the festival, and some of these people were people that were brand new to the festival, and I try to couch it in remembering like this is a bourbon festival that also has bottle sales, right? That's kind of a value add to the event. But if you're only
Sampling event with bottle sales, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And sampling may not even be the right phrase, at least for me, because there's the experience of meeting people. There's the cocktails that are a portion of it. There's the food that becomes there's art. There's so many other things. Like there's this celebration that's happening. You have so many opportunities to experience things. And I'm going to use a parallel here, right? So you have lines, you have experiences, you have all of these things going on. It's like Disney World for bourbon people. And if you only go to Disney World for the rides, just for the rides, you're not going to have nearly as good a time if you go for the entire experience where you're going to have ambiance and food and participation and activities.
It's great.
There's a lot more going on. So kind of couch it in that. And if you're coming, especially if you're coming as a VIP and you've spent that money, you expect some degree of access, but there are probably cheaper ways to get access to bottles than driving yourself to Bardstown for a 3-day festival in Kentucky, paying for the tickets. Like, it's good that you can get access to these things. These are things that are essential to these distilleries, but it shouldn't be your prime experience. There's so many other wonderful things that are happening in and around Bardstown during that time and in the event. It's just cool that you also get to be able to buy bottles. And so I kind of couch that there, but the VIPs have some degree of expectation. That's all sold out. General admission has some degree of expectation. That's all sold out. What's left to buy, right? So you guys are selling this out as an attendee or a potential attendee. What can I still get access to that I haven't gotten yet?
Well, and we've focused a lot on the VIP experience. I mentioned that earlier because we do want those people to know that they're in a special exclusive group. But that said, the last couple of years, we've focused most of our marketing energy on promoting the general admission experience because the 3 days from noon to 6, you have the same access to the same distilleries, the same master distillers, the same, in many cases, bottle sales as the VIPs do, but just kind of stripped down and like focused. And most of our VIPs started off as general admission. So when we had someone like Oris Watches who only wanted to be in with VIP the first year, I said, well, why limit yourself to 800 people, 750 actually at the time, when all 6 or 7 thousand people walking around on the grounds here could be VIP last year. They didn't maybe get it this year, but maybe they'll get it next year. So don't pre-qualify the buying power of the general
Mhm.
admission guest. And the distilleries certainly haven't done that. But so, I mean, and it's one of those when we sell out, people that didn't get a ticket are really upset, passionate. But yet during the festival, then we always forget that there's a other half of that group that are happy they got a ticket. They're pumped already.
Right.
They're on social media. But then when we do the surveys, then people say, well, you oversold the festival. So it's kind of one of those cyclical, like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. But we do pay attention to that, to your earlier point. Last year, one of our bigger issues that we had was with the VIP selling out in literally 3.5, 4 minutes. And
Mhm.
general admission was, 2 days last year. People were getting in and we could see it happening in real time. They're buying their tickets. And then we had all the add-on premium education and all the things you can really customize a la carte and create your unique experience. Even if you're general admission, and heck, the Sunday 1 day sampler ticket, you can actually on that Sunday add on those different experiences. So they're trying to buy too many things at one time, kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. So
Mhm.
this year we decided to break it up like we did the first year or two. Focus on the admission tickets. Get your VIP, get your general admission, let the dust settle, breathe for a week or two. And then this, Thursday, Friday, we're coming back. And that's where you can add on your one of your or any number of your experiences like the dining, the culinary pieces, the cocktail pieces, the education. We're pre-selling, pre-renting lockers. So if you really want to get in on the lockers, you'll be able to do that this weekend and know you've got a locker reserved. We're offering a shuttle service this year, so you can buy your in advance your shuttle pass by the day or by the weekend. And then obviously then we have our number one selling shirt every year is what we've called the concert shirt. It's got the design of that year's logo on the front, and then on the back is the roster of distilleries. So you'll be able to buy that also starting this year. So starting this weekend. So it's kind of fun. I mean, you see people that are wearing past year shirts and, oh, you were here in 2021. You're OG. But I think people genuinely like to wear you know, get their shirt ahead of time, wash it a little bit and then wear it rather than just picking it up brand new at the festival. But you can still do that too, and we'll have our full festival store. But and I think that worked really well. I know it worked well for our team, like breaking it up so we're not trying to just jam everything onto this box office website at one time. It gave us a little time to take a step back and then make sure we're doing the second wave of this correctly. Again, like we used to do it the first couple of years, we would sell in mid-May. We'd wait till after the Kentucky Derby would run because locally here, at least there's so much chaos around that. So we come out in mid-May with the general admission tickets, and
Mhm.
then National Bourbon Day, June 14th, is when we would do all these add-ons. So we're still able to be, a full 6 weeks earlier than what we had historically done. So I think that's pretty good. And then people then can figure out if you're a general admission, but you want to really go to this culinary education, you can add that. And then now you're kind of elevating your experience a little more than just the baseline, which is still a fun experience. So
Yeah. And I think at least from a person who purchased for a couple years, appreciate the concept of being able to get your entry. Right? I know that I am going to the event, and then you can come back to the special one-off premium events that are happening inside the facility, and you can plan them around because a lot of people are coming to the festival, but they may spend the morning at a distillery, or after they're done, there's some event that's happening somewhere else, and they can start planning out their week a little bit better once they know they have attendance instead of trying to do it
great
during
point.
the purchase process, which is
Great,
a
great point.
mad
And
dash.
And we know, and we're working on trying to find out how many people do this, but we know people come in the week before the
Mhm.
festival and do the bourbon trail, and then they
Yep.
end their time here in Kentucky with the KBF, or they come in for the bourbon festival and they stay on for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're still tearing down the festival, but they're still out doing some distillery tours, and they do use that weekend, to your point, to kind of split up the trip. And with the unlimited reentries, unlike a lot of festivals, once you're in, you can't leave. Here we hope you leave. We encourage you to go out and dine, see the city of, Bardstown for what it is, but also visit those distilleries if you were able to get a tour book. That is
Yeah,
high
and so
demand.
those additional events are going on sale later this week, today is the 20th for anybody who's looking
Right.
at that.
So it'll be 23rd, the 23rd for I think we're doing 23rd for the VIPs, or the 24th for GA. There's a 2 day window, but it'll be marketed strictly to people that have a ticket. So now it used to be the larger database. Now we know who got tickets. Now we're going to market and communicate directly with them or with you, people that are listening and following along here. So if you have tickets, you should be looking for communication all
Paying
week on
attention
how
to
you
what's
like
coming
them.
next. Yeah. You get
Correct.
your opportunity to plan some more. I guess when you think about this, right? Because you mentioned earlier that your capacity is largely unchanged. How do you think about the future of the event, knowing that you have no problem selling? You got 15,000 or so potential people that want to buy a ticket. You're selling out in 2 days. There's a number of ways that you can change that. Is you can increase or you can increase attendance numbers, or you can increase footprint. What do you see as the future for attendance? Do you think you want to keep it kind of about this footprint and this number of people, or is there a growth concept? Like what happens next?
Well, and we talk about that all the time.
Hmm.
The number one thing is we're not looking to raise the prices to price people out. That's not going to be a strategy. We're very careful. Obviously the cost of us producing the event goes up just like anything else. So, I mean, we're taking the ticket prices up $5, $10, $15 a year, which if you look at other events, that's a pretty affordable bump. So that's not part of the strategy. We are very landlocked. We've got two schools. We've got a church with the large Catholic church right there. We've got City Hall right there. So we're very disruptive to that neighborhood for those 2 weeks that we're there setting up, because it takes us 8 days, 9 days to set up, 3, 4 days of the festival itself, and then a full 3 days for us to take it all down, get it away, and restore everything. I mean, the obvious is, well, boy, if we just go wave a magic wand and move to a larger venue, hypothetically go out and build it in a pasture somewhere and do the Woodstock thing, we could fit a lot more people in there, but you lose that experience, which is you're 2 blocks from the downtown, the restaurants, bars, and all the shops. You lose that mature tree-like park setting that everyone loves, including me. So for everything, boy, we could do this and accommodate more people, then there's a trade-off that you lose a lot of that ambiance. So we've always kept it pretty tight and just said, look, we love where we are, and we actually love the size of the event. The distilleries could potentially talk to more people. If we could fit another 1,000 people into the grounds, maybe they would be able to see more people. But as it is right now, I think there's already lines for the sampling, and you see that more in the last couple of years in the craft area. I mean, Heaven Hill and Beam and Maker's Mark have always had a line, but the craft area has always been a little bit more relaxed. Well, you saw a couple of years ago, I mean, Pursuit came in and they drew a crowd, and then the next year after that, then this last year, Macaulay Minton with Dark Arts, I mean, he had a line that would rival some of the larger distilleries on the main lawn. So that's kind of the unknown, is we don't know from year to year who's really going to be that kind of the belle of the ball. Our first year, EJ Curley came in, a brand that very few people knew, and they were the one that really got a lot of the attention that first year. So, and I love that. I love that every distillery, regardless of how much marketing dollars they've got and how big of a footprint they take, you never know. They could, the hot commodity for that year's festival. But a couple of years ago, we experimented with the double decker, and then the last 2 years, Whiskey House has used it. So they got a ground level first floor where they're doing sampling, and then like an upgrade VIP experience that they can take their guests and give them, a little bit of an elevated experience as well. So going up instead of out seems to be the answer, but then that also very few of those double deck type structures exist. So anyone who was there last year or locally knows that the city of Bardstown was doing a lot of construction behind the festival grounds for a new kind of aquatic recreation center, and there are a lot of potential for us to use that going forward in 2027 and beyond. But right now, for this year, it's still under construction. I believe parking lots and a lot of that stuff might be done, but I don't know if we're going to be able to use that for any expansions for this year or not. But we always look at the footprint and look at the flow of people, and also try to be as least invasive as possible when it comes to the world that goes on around us for those couple of weeks. But it's a challenge every day. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, when you're adding, I can't remember exactly what the population of the city of Bardstown is, but it's pretty small. Like Bardstown is a small town. What's that?
13,000-ish, I think was the number.
So you're adding effectively 50% of the population just based off of event attendees, not counting folks that might be tagging along, spouses that might not be attending the event proper but are still in town. So you're, effectively doubling the size of a city for a 4-day period, which is really important to a place like Bardstown because it brings in a lot of revenue, but it also brings in headaches. You're going to have, as an attendee, I do appreciate the trees and the shade and the ambiance. It's not a big open field like Bonnaroo or even, Bourbon and Beyond, right? It's a big open field. People have a great time, but it's a different kind of experience, right? And I think it's good that exists. This is sort of different. I also think when you think about other festivals, the resale of tickets has been a big problem in a lot of places, whether people are selling through StubHub or private entities or whatever. Do you guys see a bunch of that? And how do you deal with resale of tickets?
Well, and we were just talking about this last week, like the days of the scalpers. If you went to a football game, I grew up a Packers fan, so you'd go to Lambeau Field, and it wasn't legal in the city of Green Bay to scalp. So you'd have to walk across the street to another town that was legal, but you're actually buying a physical ticket there. And then we did the printed home. Technology came along for 20 years where you had your trusty printer at home and you could print it out. And then they went to the QR codes. The problem with the tickets back then, the printed home, was you could go to Kinko's and run 50 copies and sell them to everybody. Well, the reality is the first person with that scan that comes through the gate is the only good ticket, whether it was the first original ticket or someone that bought one. And then you got 49 people that are bummed because they got ripped off and they can't get into the event. And I've seen that happen at Churchill Downs. So when we went to the RFID wristband, it's a lot more expensive technology, but it gets people through quicker. But you still have people. In fact, the day before we started selling, so this would have been the 12th of April, people were already on Facebook Marketplace and these groups trying to sell Bourbon Festival tickets that they hadn't even gotten yet. So we always say buyer beware. We've been working with our ticket partner, Tixer, for the last 2 years. Actually, we requested it 2 years ago. They didn't get it put together to offer it last year, but for 2026, there is a new resale opportunity where, and we limit that. We don't let you, if you're buying tickets willy nilly on sale day for thinking that you're going to scalp them and have a secondary market. Well, that's not going to happen, at least through our platform. Because we limit that you can only sell them for face value plus your fees that you incurred on the original purchase. We also limit the number of tickets that people can buy because of that. And contrary to what people on the social media were saying, there's not bots buying our tickets. Our Pixar is our partner. They've got several anti-bot layers to make sure that it's actually connected to a real email address, and then the tickets go to that person. And we understand life happens. You and I, before the show, we both have had some family things that kind of disrupts your day. People buying tickets in April, there's always a chance, oh my gosh, I forgot, so-and-so is getting married, or you had a death in the family or something. So the resale option is really the best way to go for all parties. So, because we have a no refunds, rain or shine type event, but we want to be customer friendly as well, because we know in 6 months things can happen. So before, we'd have to either tell you no, I'm sorry, you got to find someone on your own. Then they're out there on Facebook and trying to, sell their tickets, or they'd have to file a credit card dispute, and nobody wants to go through that ugliness. So this allows you to get in and sell it. All of our ticket levels have a wait list on them. And that's another new function for us that started last year. Is you didn't get that VIP ticket, but you really want to go and you really want that VIP ticket, but let's go ahead and buy the general admission. And then if your name comes up because two other VIPs gave up their tickets, you automatically get your credit card charge for that VIP. And then you can sell your GA ticket that you no longer need. So we're really trying to facilitate that transaction so it's safe and fair for everyone involved. Because there are people out there that are scammers, unfortunately, and people get burnt. I've been burnt, on different things. So it's always best to go through the trusted website. And if you have any questions, you can email us at info@kybourbonfestival.com. We literally have two people monitoring that at all times. You can message us through, DM through Facebook. We have a KY Bourbon Fest website. A social media presence, as well as on Instagram at KY Bourbon Fest. So always, always, always ask. Like, this seems legit, but if it's too good to be true, it probably is, that old adage. But there are several ways that people can buy and sell their tickets in a safe way. And the buyer knows they're not going to be getting, screwed at the end. And the seller, who has a legitimate, reason to be wanting to get out of it, they can do that. So it's kind of neat to see that come together and to be a part of developing that with our partner.
I like the degree of protection that you're building in for festival attendees, because this is a very communal event. And I saw a lot of groups of people that had purchased their tickets together. And so you may have gone out and, bought your max allotment of VIP tickets, and one in your group may not be able to go, right? Something has happened, or you expected they could go and they changed. I know the place where I stay, we have a handful of folks that usually attend. They all buy separately, but this year a couple of them aren't going to be able to attend for any number of reasons. And if they can't attend, but you pre-purchased the tickets. Now you're kind of stuck in this position of, do you eat the cost? Do you try to find somebody else to go along with you? Providing a safe way to give those back into the community is really, really nice. I'll be interested to see how that goes, because I know a few folks that were targeting getting VIP tickets and they didn't get them. And so they did purchase the GA. See how many of those kind of turn back into an opportunity for them to get what they want. There's a great success story in that for the folks that get that. And then being able to open up, I guess, for the general admission tickets, if I didn't get any ticket and I want a GA ticket, I need to be watching for the resale site effectively, because if I'm GA and waiting on VIP, I get informed. But otherwise, you've got to be ready to kind of pay attention to that. Is a wait list for those types of folks, or is it just okay?
Yes, all levels. And as of the time of us talking today, I believe there's still some of the Sunday sampler, the 1-day tickets, and those appeal to several groups. One, a lot of locals that maybe just aren't that into it and they want to go and have that experience. And Sunday afternoon is actually my favorite time of the festival, because it is a little more chill and the pressure is off for the big bottle sales and things. So, but there are a lot of people that are just kind of tip their toe in the water. And we were talking about earlier, the festival, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are bourbon enthusiasts that know more about bourbon, the process, more than you and I combined. And it doesn't take much to know more than me, but we also have to know that there are first time attendees and people that are just getting into bourbon. So we have to create and produce an event that appeals to the enthusiast, but also isn't intimidating for the newbie. And this culture is very welcoming. If you've been around this for 15 years and you're consider yourself expert, there's nothing you love more than putting your arm around someone and saying, "Hey, come on, let's let me teach you a little bit about this." So it's a very accommodating and very welcoming culture. Just like on the distillery side, they might fight for every little quarter inch of on the shelf space at retail, but behind the scenes, the master distillers and the people who make it, they love talking to each other, collaborating, trying each other's juice. So it's a very, very cool, kind of a dynamic to see that playing out both on the industry side, but also on the front facing consumer side.
Yeah, I think that operationally, most distilleries are friends. The only people that aren't are probably the marketing folks and the people that are putting it on the shelf directly. They're the ones that do most of the competition. But
And the
you're exactly
wholesalers,
right.
the
Yeah, the
wholesalers.
wholesalers. But you're exactly right. Sunday is a perfect day for a person that's wanting to figure out if they wanted to kind of, you talk about a lot of GA folks became VIP attendees, but Sunday attendees could become GAs next year by going and it's experiencing what it's like, because you may get there. And also, if you don't like big crowds, an event like this is a little daunting, but Sunday is not big crowd feeling, right? It is definitely more laid back. And you said earlier, people that are coming in and they do the Kentucky Bourbon Festival and then they do the trail afterwards. You got to pace yourself if you're going to do that, because you got Friday, Saturday, Sunday of a bourbon festival where you're going to have an introduction to so many different spirits and then hit the trail the week after. There's got to be some liver support and plenty of water and a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to need to do in ahead.
You have to
So
game plan for it for sure. Like
yes, and water
my
is
wife and
important.
I went and with a bunch of people out to Denver to do the craft beer tour. I mean, we literally hit 11 breweries in 2 days, but you have to hydrate up and you have to be responsible. It's a marathon.
Yeah,
Otherwise
it is
it'll,
definitely a marathon. It is
yeah,
not a sprint. Drink your water in between pours, make sure you're ready to go. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about kind of the event proper itself. You have a featured distillery every year, and in 2026, this year, it's going to be New Riff, and they just won the world's best bourbon at World Whiskies Award earlier this year. Is this a situation where, how did they become the selection here? Because they've obviously been on the come up for a while now. They're pretty well known by a bunch of folks, but you've got a myriad of distilleries to pick from. What made New Riff the right one for this year?
well, to really understand and explain that, we go back to 2021. So during the COVID year, we did the virtual uh, series that's still on our YouTube channel if you're interested. Some really good content. But Bill Samuels was so into the direction that we were at that point just talking about taking the Bourbon Festival. We hadn't even pulled off the first one yet, but he got excited and donated a charity barrel and we bottled them. So we had 240, 250 bottles that had Kentucky Bourbon Festival on it. And that really kind of started our single barrel program, the Distillers Road, that you can still buy. But what I felt is after they did such a nice gesture by giving us that barrel to sell, for our profit. We said we need to show them some love and give them something that other distilleries aren't going to be able to have. And that's what kind of started the Featured Distiller. We elevated them. We called them the Featured Distiller. They got to name the cocktail, the official cocktail at the KBF. We had the distillers dinner at the River House restaurant that featured Thomas Bolton, their brand ambassador at the time. Now he's been promoted up and sits on our board. But they had the cask strength line had just really started being their feature. And so we did those kind of things. So every year there's been a different distiller based on that same kind of the spirit of showcasing, but not forgetting the other 63 or 64 brands that are out there, but really elevating one. Not one distillery has ever said anything bad about why do they get to do that. And my answer is always because they either came to me with something new and creative, or they donated this barrel and really got into the program. So we've had, Beam, they donated a Knob Creek barrel. That was year 2 after Maker's Mark. We had Bardstown Bourbon Company at Heaven Hill, Angel's Envy last year, and obviously now New Riff, as you mentioned. So every year it becomes a little bit more. I mean, we still want a level playing field. We don't want to elevate one distillery so no one else feels like they're getting any attention. But everyone knows they have a chance to be there. And when we get to the end of the line and we say, well, geez, there's no one else that's expressed interest in being featured, we would go back to the pool and go back to Maker's Mark potentially and kind of go through the whole history again. But we've got probably 3 or 4 distilleries that have already informally committed for 2027, 28, 29 out. And we just need to firm things up. But there's some good ones in there, New Riff, they started off our very first year as a craft, the small 10-foot by 10-foot tent. And we've watched them and celebrated their growth and popularity and the profile of the distillery. The story behind them is a great story. One of the more fun barrel selection experiences out there. They also represent, on the north end of the Bourbon Trail, coming, in out of Covington. They're kind of bookend the trail. So, I mean, we're really excited about that. Every distillery has an opportunity to be the featured distillery. You donate a barrel. We do our single barrel already with you that the distilleries now can sell, but it's just an additional barrel out of their inventory. And then that gets bottled. And that has been what our VIPs get as part of their VIP packages. They get that featured distiller, that bottle. It's been a pretty successful, but also very easy program to manage. And it all goes back to Bill Samuels telling Bardstown, Kentucky, if you're going to call yourself the bourbon capital of the world, well, you better look and act like it. And when he heard our plans, he just got so excited that finally someone was doing, and it was not just me. I mean, the board of directors got it. The community really got behind it. But he just got so excited that he gave us this barrel. And my aunt, I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do with a barrel full of bourbon? They're like, no, we'll bottle it for you, But that just kind of shows my ignorance coming into the event. Also, it's been a fun program to develop.
Yeah, and I think the year that the Knob Creek bottle was there, I had purchased VIP for both my wife and myself, which was great because now I have a bottle that I can hold on to for a while, and then one that I was able to drink. And so I've still got that sitting in a closet, waiting for me to rediscover it again in 5 years when I'm kind of pilfering through what I've got there. Now you've mentioned the north end of the trail there with New Riff. You mentioned there the north end. I've also seen, in the last couple of years, the growth of the west end of the trail. When we look at, there's Ingram out there, Jackson Purchase, Silk Velvet, Western Kentucky, Green River. They're all being represented at the festival as well. Is that a result of them coming to you and saying, hey, we want to bring our stuff here? Or is that a result of saying, hey, we're going to expand and cover the entire state? Because oftentimes people think of the Bourbon Trail and they think of Bardstown, Lexington, Louisville, Danville. That area is where it's sort of centric. And you have kind of the folks out here in the wastelands of the West. I'm in far Western Kentucky. So these are all folks that are really close to me. And then you've got the old Pogues of the world and the Augustas that are on the far end of the East. And those don't always get necessarily as much attention historically. Did you guys make this, or is this just these distillers are saying, hey, this is the value of the event, we want to be there?
Well, it's both. In 2020, there's no silver lining in that pandemic year that we all lived through, but it did buy me time to do outreach. And again, I'm an old salesperson. I used to sell advertising in my local newspaper, and prospecting back then was the yellow pages. As a salesperson, we go through the yellow pages and I'm going to go call on this shoe store or this shop or whatever. And that's the way I started this is we had 9 distilleries that were in the 2019 festival before we reimagined it. And no craft distilleries were really involved. And then coming from the Brewfest side of things, like you need to have the big breweries that people recognize, but you also, main reason people were coming to these brew festivals is they knew I was committed to bringing in the craft and in some case the home brewers. So
Mm-hmm.
the home brew people, and they had this alliance. I said, why wouldn't that same mentality work with bourbon? You want to know that Beam and Maker's Mark and Heaven Hill and Four Roses and, Woodford and Old Forester, and, they're all there. But if you watch people, when they come in the gate, the main gate, they peel off to the right, to the north and go into the craft distiller area. They know those big guys will be there unless they're going to beeline for a bottle or something time sensitive. But for the most part, people enjoy going through and kind of getting their, getting a sense of what's happening. And then they'll go see those. It's a small venue. You got 3 days to do it, but it's proven. So I spent that first year, I went through the KDA membership, spreadsheet and just Google, just good old fashioned searches. And I'd get an email address and I'd introduce myself as the new director of the festival. And this is what we're planning on doing. Most people that I talked to ended up coming in that first year. The older legacy brands, they got it. They wanted to be there. Finally, someone listened to what they were saying, but we never had craft. So the first year we went from 9 in 2019 to 34 in 2021. And 17 of them, literally half of them were craft. And that has grown to where we've kind of capped it off because of space, 65 roughly brands, and over half of them are the craft distilleries. So I think the first year we didn't charge it. We charged a small distillery $800 or $1,000 for a 10 by 10, like a trade show booth, because I told them we didn't want the cost of participating to be the reason why they couldn't be a part of this unknown event. So from the craft side of things, I believe most of the ones that came with us, we went from 17 to, I think the next year we had 26. So we added 9 craft distilleries, and the word was starting to get out that it was a lot of really good, consumers were coming to this, and several distilleries every year have said, you put the exact right consumer in front of us. That's what makes us different than, the Bourbon Festival, different than a lot of other so-called whiskey events, is you've got the people who make it, right? Kentucky master distillers and maturation people. You've got those people stand in the tent, and then we're putting the top enthusiasts from not only across the U.S., but 15 foreign countries attended last year. So it's that mix where we're putting the right front of people in front of the distilleries, and the distilleries are bringing out their new products and kind of rewarding those people for being at that festival. So the word definitely spread, but we also still keep marketing it and promoting it and talking to people and asking for feedback every year. We do several meetings with the distilleries. But yeah, every year there's going to be a couple of new brands that people haven't heard of. And that's kind of the fun part. I mean, again, you have to know that the major brands are mostly going to be there, but some of the smaller emerging type brands and also the people who are making the whiskey, in the industry, they tend to move around. So you might have somebody from one of the legacy brands that's now all of a sudden master distiller at one of these other brands, kind of like what Macaulay did. He left Wilderness Trail and started Dark Arts. So they build up a fan base and a following. So yeah, that's how it started. It was literally me reaching out to people saying, I want to do this, but you're not going to be a sponsor. I need partners. I need investors. I had 3-year contracts for everybody, because I said, if I've got to go year to year and okay, you had a good year. Now, do you want to do it again? I'm going to spend all my time renewing your contracts and not building the program. So, I mean, again, to their credit, the first 3-year, 21, 22, and 23. And the coolest thing, and I get goosebumps when I think about it, because it doesn't happen in this industry, in festivals. On like the Saturday and Sunday of 2023, I had distilleries that were like, hey, Randy. I'm like, oh no, what I kind of cringed. What happened? Like, this is our last year of the contract. We need to renew. Can you get us a new contract for next year? And again, that does not happen. I mean, you get loyalty from sponsors, but everybody has to do a lot of work and a lot of dog and pony show to keep those sponsors happy. And we still work that way. But, yeah, so I think that's probably the best thing is if we stop bringing the distilleries in, then the consumers lose. And if we stop bringing the world-class consumers that we bring to the table, and then the distilleries will find something shinier or sexier out there and want to go to that. And right now, the way, the industry is and this economy, the bottle sales and putting those two components together are more important now than they ever have been because of the bottle sales. They know somewhere in a corporate office, the CFOs, accountant people see a spike in sales because a lot of these distilleries 3 days at the festival outsell their actual bricks and mortar gift shop thing. So we're important and we're relevant because of that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And in a place where the market is constricting, there's very few places that you can take 3 days and put brands in front of effectively 6,000 maniacs, right? Because these people are going to this event, they're ready to stand in line, they're ready to spend their money, and they've already spent money to get here. They're ready for the experience. It's unrivaled in a lot of places, and it's the thing that I think keeps the brands expanding. You mentioned Dark Arts. I think of, Potter Jane as well, right? Because you've got two folks that were at a premier legacy distillery that were like, hey, we're going to go do our own thing. And they bring their followings along with them. And it's really impressive to watch year over year as a person who's there. And you mentioned there's a bunch of people coming from other countries to this as well. I think you said 13 or 15. Did you say 15?
15 from last year. I've yet to look at this year because at this point I know zip codes of the primary ticket buyer. So if you bought 4 tickets, I know you, but I don't know your 3 friends yet. Once we get a little bit later in the summer, then I start finding out where people are actually getting their tickets assigned out. But yeah, it's a pretty cool 15% of people that come to the festival are from Kentucky, and 85% are from outside of Kentucky. And I look at rankings state by, state number 1 to state number 50. Kentucky obviously is always number 1 because, there's a built-in fan base here. But then you take the other 85% and split them down and see where they're coming from. And we have Alaska, Hawaii. It might just be 2 people from Hawaii or from Alaska. We have New Zealand, but I mean, it might just be 1 couple or, Australia and New Zealand, but yet we still have influence in some of those areas. So we're hoping to grow that.
Yeah, and that's another signal to a brand right there when you're saying 85% are from outside the state of Kentucky. So there is significant, unless you're talking about the Kentuckiana area or Ohio, everybody else is having to make huge travel arrangements. It's a big thing for being able to get in front of, sips to lips. You always hear people saying sips to lips, and they're getting that opportunity. And also the opportunity to sell things. This is for some brands, this is the Black Friday of bourbon for them. Like, this is the part of the year where they start going from maybe slightly in the red to all the way into the black for their sales. But, there is, around 6,000 people here. The crowd is massive considering the footprint that you have, right? The Spalding Hall grounds, infrastructure, lockers and shuttles and premium events and the penthouse, because you guys have a penthouse where there's some events that happen there. It all has to work flawlessly, which I'm sure it never does work flawlessly, but most folks don't see whenever it's not flawless. I guess what's one logistical nightmare that like keeps you up at night, or the thing that you worry about maybe the most from just an implementation perspective?
Well, and it really isn't even the festival itself. Let me explain. I don't mean that in like an arrogant way. I mean, this team has been together for 4 and sometimes 5 years, so we do get that. But the thing that makes me anxious and worries me is the unknown of, like a couple years ago, New Orleans, New Year's Eve, somebody decided to drive their truck down, Bourbon Street at 2 a.m. and killed a bunch of people. So, and I worked at Churchill Downs, Derby security was one of the things that fell underneath my area of responsibility. And, not only do we have to worry about someone driving through a crowd of people at the Derby, but we have thousands and thousands of horses on the backside, and they're all worth millions. So we had to really secure that. So last year we said, this festival is getting a profile now that we need to make sure that we're secure, and not only the perimeter to make sure everybody scans their ticket, but I'm even talking, we went out a block all the way around the festival and we put in barriers that you can't easily at least drive a vehicle through, because we want people to feel safe once they get in that area. So, I mean, that kind of thing, the liability, obviously, it's an alcohol event and you have a lot of people there. 99% of the people are very responsible. And I know groups of friends that, somebody draws the straw and today they're DD and the other guys get to enjoy it. And then the next day. So, I mean, you have to kind of be, but not everyone is that, intelligent and careful. And so that concerns me too. I mean, I never want to see anybody ever, get injured or worse as a result of, their time with the festivals. There's a lot of exposure, and the whole festival could go away just like that if
Hmm.
if we're not careful about taking care of that piece of the business as well. So a lot of is the behind the scenes stuff is what makes me more nervous about it. And I will be honest, so you've probably heard Tom Brady, I think, said every single game day on Sunday, he had nervous stomach, you
Hmm.
know, every single day, every year that when we have our ticket sales go on sale, I wake up at, 3:30 in the morning, partly excited, but also like, what if people don't buy tickets this year, Um, but have to trust the programming and that we're still relevant. We ask the distilleries what they want to talk about, what's important to them right now. But we also then kind of test it with the consumer to make sure that what the distillery wants to talk about, the consumer wants to hear. So, I mean, there's a lot of that, year round, just kind of keeping your ear to the ground and finger on the pulse or whatever analogy you want to do. Yeah, I mean, the safety and security of our guests and our distilleries is probably always, when they say safety first, that is absolutely a real thing. And we never want to make the news, evening news, Bardstown, Kentucky, USA. And there was something that was avoidable, but we didn't. So we try to, anticipate all of that and work with local law enforcement, not to the extent that Derby, I mean, Derby has snipers and FBI
Right.
and every other thing, but we definitely have a presence of people that deal with this all year round that are experts at it to help make sure that we've got a safe and a secure venue. Then you can have the fun once it's safe and secure.
Yeah, and I'll say, I've yet to feel unsafe. I know some folks get a little bothered by how maybe onerous rules are for you to bring bags in or do whatever, right, to be able to get inside a facility. But that's why I asked the question, is because it provides the frame of reference of saying, hey, this is not just an arbitrary rule that someone made. This is so you can come in here and you can feel safe being around thousands of people and not feel uncomfortable. And I haven't seen, you know, I haven't personally seen anything out of the question there, or out of the norm in behaviors. There are folks that catch themselves over consuming, but I've also seen their group of friends support them and get them out and make sure they get water and make sure they get taken care of. So it's always been kind of nice to make this thing function at the scale that you're at, right? So you've got the event, you've got the distilleries. The distilleries have people that work in booths, whether they be employees or others. But then there are folks that are making sure that you get in and out or whatever. How do you get a force of people to be able to make it happen? Because you said you're a small team, but this is not a small event. How does day of happen? How do you get all the bodies needed to do the work?
Well, there's two of us that are full-time actual employees, Stacy Pritchard, who does all of our distillery relations, and me. And then we have people on contract. So we have a public relations firm, Tracy Green. You talk to Tracy or Anna, but I've got a whole group of people. Some are retired that I used to work with at Churchill Downs. The gentleman that comes in and handles all of our actual operations and logistics and setup and tear down from day one until days later used to own the tent company that if you ever go to Churchill Downs on Derby Day, the tents, I mean, he and I worked together on all that Derby setup. So now I know that he knows 10 times what I know about logistics and setup. So I surround myself with good people that sometimes only work a couple months with us and sometimes they do work year round with us. We have a web designer, creative director. We've got someone who operates our business, our box office side of things. Security director came from Churchill Downs, and before that, he ran Lucas Oil Stadium. He ran Camp Randall up in Madison, Wisconsin. So he's got the security. And when we were working together at Churchill Downs on security, he got a lot of the Fort Knox active duty or combat vets. And so when you see the security around the perimeter and like in the VIP area, majority of those quote unquote event staff security roles are Fort Knox people that we pay either individually or they are part of like the combat veterans, and they're trying to raise money for their groups. We pay the equivalent of hourly, but it all goes to that one organization. And this last year we had 101 volunteers that literally came out of like the Bourbon Capital Guild and just people that they want to be a part of the festival. If they volunteer one day, they get a weekend pass for themselves to enjoy the event. So there's kind of that enticement. But the most important thing of putting on an event of this size is absolutely the volunteers. I mean, it took us years because the local community, if you remember the first year or two, the local community hadn't really embraced what we were doing. And in some cases, they're outright, we're just on the opposite. They hated what we're doing. And now we slowly won them over. The business community's making money on it. When 85% of the people come from outside of Kentucky, that's a major economic driver, tourism and the retail shops. So people are coming around and they're wanting to be a part of it. But we've got a full, basically, I call her full time, but volunteer coordinator. That's all she does is recruit and sign up people and then look at the different areas that we need volunteer help. If you see that 2 or 3 days during distillery load in, when the distilleries are coming with the big trucks and the barrels and offloading pallets, it's a whole army of volunteers that come in and help make their life easier. And we've had distilleries, almost all of them have said that is the single biggest thing that we could do for them is help them with a forklift, getting things off trucks, getting them to their tent location easily and escorting them, making sure that they've got help. That stuff just doesn't happen. I mean, that's a lot of just really passionate people that want to be a part of making this event, hopefully the best one in the world. If not, we certainly aspire to be the best, not the biggest, but which is good because we don't have much room to, as we talked about earlier. But we definitely improve and we do listen. We had someone a couple of years ago, it came up from Florida, and I don't remember what the issue was, but they said, if you don't fix this or change this, we'll probably never come back again. And that hit me hard. It was right there during the weekend of the festival. I made a note literally in the notebook, and we need to look at the entry procedures and how we're getting people in and get them in quicker and everything. So we absolutely do listen to everybody, but it's pretty fun. But man, I could not do this year's festival with the team that I had in 2021. I mean, that's for sure. It was we survived the first 2 years, let's put it that way. I mean, a lot of the things that we had problems with, we got away. The public didn't see it. Kind of like on opening night, when you open the curtain, don't look back behind the stage on opening night, because it's a chaotic mess. But if we fool the people that are in the audience and they had a good time, that's a success. And that's kind of the way I said the first year or so was for the festival.
Yeah, it was definitely. I've noticed the local community come to accept the change, right? And it was a change that was necessary and meaningful, but it wasn't going to be easy. And I always felt like that from a Kentucky Bourbon Festival personnel perspective, you guys always treated that appropriately. I've seen other folks who have either ignored it or just kind of poo-pooed it away or hand wave things. It felt like you guys were more intentional with being careful about the local community, because it is a part of kind of the overall mystique. And a lot of those folks that are upset are also working for brands, because it's the distilleries there are some of the largest employer providers that exist. And so it all is, it's all sort of related to each other. We've talked a little bit about the premium events that you guys schedule. We've talked a little bit about what's happening on festival grounds. There's always been some minor modifications with how distilleries interact with folks day to day at the event. Are there any changes? I've been for a handful of years. Are there any changes that we should be looking forward to? Because we've seen bigger. Last year, I saw bigger tents and bigger setups. I think about what Angel's Envy did, and a handful of folks, including Whiskey House, where they have these sort of immersive type experiences. Are there any other changes coming, or is that just kind of growing that exact mentality?
Well, we've experimented a little bit about that. I've been a firm believer that the peak tents that you see when you come to that festival, and anybody that is listening that's been there, that's part of our brand. The old festival, we have distilleries that are made the little temporary structures and things, and it just it didn't fit. And I said early on, I want this to be about what's going on in that tent, under the tent, not the tent itself. So we try to create that level, fair, kind of a cool vibe, but let the distilleries brand it in front and inside. So a couple years ago, we really started encouraging them to invest some time and energy in their facades and activities that they're doing, the decor that might be inside the tent. Several of them had started doing more interactive things, games and things just to kind of hold people. But like the Angel's Envy structure was a cool concept. I'm not opposed to it going forward, but I really still prefer kind of the normal white tent. And there's so many things you can do with that. I always just want the attention to be on, again, what's going on here, not, wow, look at that, but I can't get in because there's so many people in there or whatever. So, I mean, the double deck structure is a unique piece that we kind of went out and showcased it to show joking that maybe we can't keep going out and take another city block, but we can go up and do some fun things in a temporary manner that can be removed and restore the venue to the beautiful grounds that it really is year round. So, it takes us a couple of weeks for the grass to come back, but we spent about $10,000 on just cleaning up, raking the grass and overseeding it and watering it, and then power washing everything. So we really do, back to your thought about the community, we do listen to the community and we do care to make sure that we are improving or at least restoring the venue back to the way it was before, we had a rather large impact on the grounds. And the parents that have to pick up their kids from the school, it's a disruption. And I've never said, oh, it's only 3 days or 8 days. I've never taken that attitude. I take it seriously because I've been that parent. I've been
Right.
disrupted. So you can't take it's 3 days of the year. It's worth it to the town. I've never said that. Other people
Mm.
have said that. Like, these people need to get over it. Look at what you're doing. But I've never said that, and I don't
Mhm.
believe that. I believe we have to be a good neighbor and a good community partner. I mean, we're a nonprofit, so we're not a big corporation. Make money enough to pay the bills on this festival and make sure we can keep producing it. But we're not a huge philanthropic like a corporation, but we try to sponsor things around town and make a difference, make
Mhm.
improvements to the venue. So hopefully this year, by the time if you get to the festival, you'll see some improvements in the actual grounds that we are paying for that makes it more usable and safer and friendlier to be there for the festival, but also it stays so the rest of the community and other people that use that property can also enjoy it. So, I mean, we're at that point now where very deliberate and strategically make those kind of improvements. Yeah, I mean, but that's kind of that's my life in a nutshell right there. When people say, "What do you do the rest of the year?" I think anybody listening to this knows what we do the rest of the
Mhm.
year, and it is just as much work as it is putting on. The festival itself is, for the most part, the easy part. If you do your job the 11 and a half months of the year, the festival itself should be um, not easy in the truest sense, but it should be come together and go off very well as a producer's standpoint.
I'll say I find myself in Bardstown a handful of times a year, and this event happens in September, which is if you're trying to recover the grass, is a less than optimal time of the year, right? Because getting ready to go into dormancy, and I've yet to come back into Bardstown in the spring or in the summer and see the grounds of Spalding Hall look barren. My family used to vacation in Georgia, and we would pass through Manchester, Tennessee every single year. It seemed the weekend that we were driving down or driving back was the same as a large festival that happens there. And that never recovers. Now, that's a volume of people, but being cognizant of the impact that you're going to have, something as simple as the grass in the community does indicate something, a degree of care for the local community, because you guys operate there, you live there, and if people want to know what you're doing the other, 11 plus months of the year, these things are hard to plan. If you've ever planned a small level event, a play or a dance for a school or whatever, those things begin 3 or 4 months in advance. And this is an event for 7,000 people plus whoever else happens to come into town. So it is definitely a full-time job. I know we're pressing up against the edge of time. So is there anything else that you want to talk about, Randy, that I haven't asked you about yet?
Well, if anyone hasn't been and kind of continuing the theme of what we talked about, this venue is absolutely the most difficult, most challenging venue that I've ever worked on in 36 years to put on a festival. But when it's set up and it's running, it's also arguably one of the most beautiful venues. So if I have like a Churchill Downs, that's all they do there, permanent everything. It's so much easier to set up for the Kentucky Derby and tear it down than it is when you've got a church and a city hall with the mayor looking out the front window and you've got the schools and the traffic. So, I mean, but I would definitely say if you haven't been to the festival, I hope we take it seriously as you approach the event as well as your time there. And then as you leave, we consider that all part of that experience. So I would really love to welcome everyone that's listening if you didn't get tickets for this year, there is always next year,
Yep.
but understand that it's a temporary city that gets built up and down in about 8 days. And it's all because of, well, number one, the community support, but also the volunteers and the throngs of people that come out to help us. But at the end of the day, the distilleries have to be there, which we work really hard to make sure they are. And then our, enthusiasts from around the world need to be there. And it just, and then I start thinking I'm already on to 2027 in some ways on some meetings that I'm having now because it's too late in the game to change it for this year. So it's a good idea for next year. So, but hopefully people are listening and they're if they haven't been, that they would love to come and experience it firsthand. And if you have been, know that we don't take you for granted and we work really hard to make sure you want to keep coming back every year.
It's a phenomenal event. It's always a good time. It's hectic. It is 6,000 people. It's going to be that. Just you have to go in expecting that it's not going to be a casual stroll through the city, right? You're going to be in an event, but you guys do a phenomenal job, at least from my opinion, for whatever that's worth, of making it seem pretty seamless, right? I'm able to get in and out in a relatively decent amount of time, right? Because you're just trying to process people through the gates. I'm looking forward to seeing what 2026 brings, and then beyond that, obviously. Thank you so much for hopping on and having a conversation with me, Randy. I know you've got a lot of things going on. You still have some things to sell later on this week. You've got other meetings that you're having. So anytime people gives me time, I'm really, really appreciative. So thank you for hopping on.
Likewise. And, going back to me having a great team, that's why I'm able to spend this time with you, because it always wouldn't have been the easiest a couple of years ago. I probably wouldn't have had the time to do it because I was doing so many different things. But, it's our 35th year. I'm very proud of that. And I've got a great team that makes sure everything keeps going while I can take some time and talk to you and talk to your friends. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Embellish Pod. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform you're consuming this on. Leave a comment if at all possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram using @EmbellishPod. You can give me a follow so you can keep up what's going on here. I can also be found at www.embellishpod.com. It's all of my links, accounts, contact details, and even maybe a few articles about whatever I happen to decide to write about. Thanks for stopping by.